Have you ever imagined a woman lying in her bed at night, staring at the ceiling with tears in her eyes, not because you shouted at her, not because you begged her, not because you chased her, but because for the first time she realizes she misjudged you, she underestimated you, she lost a man she didn't even fully understand yet? Have you ever wondered what it would feel like to be that man, the one whose absence hits harder than anyone else's presence, the one her body misses before her mind can even explain why? That's exactly what we're going to build today. And no, it's not a childish trick, it's not manipulation, it's not make her jealous nonsense. It's one decisive move, done once, from a place of self-respect, emotional discipline, and masculine clarity, that imprints you so deeply in her emotional world that when you finally withdraw, her nervous system reacts before her logic does. That's when she feels that knot in her chest, that urge to pick up the phone, that heaviness that turns into tears she doesn't know how to justify. On the surface, she putty decir, I'm fine, I moved on. But her body knows she lost something rare. Before we get to what you have to do once, I need you to understand something that most men completely ignore. Women do not stay emotionally hooked because of one nice message, one date, one compliment, or one night together. They stay hooked to the man who creates a specific emotional pattern inside them. In influence and attraction psychology, they talk about emotional imprint. That's the invisible mark you leave on someone's nervous system when your presence is associated with a unique combination of feelings: safety and challenge, warmth and mystery, admiration and a tiny bit of tension, desire and the fear of losing you. When those elements exist together, you stop being just another guy and start becoming an emotional reference point. Every man she meets is unconsciously compared to that reference. If you become that reference and then, just once, you remove your energy from her life with discipline and calm, the impact is brutal. That's when the tears come out of nowhere. That's when she asks herself, why does this hit me so hard? Why do I care so much about him? Why am I thinking about him at night? But listen carefully. You cannot create this effect if you are just another needy guy pretending to be strong for a week. You can't fake this. What I'm about to describe is not a performance, it's a standard. The do this once from the title is not a trick. It's the final punch of a much deeper transformation. The move that makes a woman cry for you without knowing why only works when it comes from a man who is radically willing to lose her rather than lose himself. And most men aren't. Most men would rather betray their standards, silence their intuition, tolerate disrespect and swallow their pain, than risk her leaving. And that's exactly why they're replaceable. A woman doesn't cry at night for a man she could control at any moment. She cries for the man she thought estaba seguro, that she expected would always be there, and then suddenly realizes he is gone. Not because he's weak, not because he can't handle it, but because his self-respect has a limit. Let's break down the core mistake that keeps you from becoming that man. Right now, whether you admit it or not, your emotional world is probably revolving around her. You check your phone waiting for her messages. Your mood rises or falls depending on her responses. You replay conversations in your head, trying to guess what she meant, what you did wrong, what you should say next. In other words, you have placed your inner world in her hands. You might think you're being romantic, loyal, committed, but in reality, you're broadcasting one message loud and clear. You control how I feel. From a psychological perspective, that kills attraction. A woman can enjoy that control. She can use it. She can play with it. But she does not deeply admire it. She doesn't lose sleep over a man whose emotions she can flip on and off like a light switch. Admiration, respect, and the kind of longing that hurts come from a different place. From a man who feels deeply, but whose center does not depend on her. A man who can want her intensely and still walk away if the price is his dignity. This is where the stoic part of your masculinity comes in. Stoicism is not about being a stone and feeling nothing. It's about refusing to be a slave to what you feel. It's the discipline of saying, yes, I care. Yes, this hurts. But my actions are guided by my values, not by my fear of loss. When you bring that to seduction, everything changes. Most guys try to keep a woman close at cualquier precio. The stoic man does the opposite. He keeps himself close to his core at any price. He chooses respect over attachment. He chooses standards over instant relief. And because that is so rare, it becomes magnetically attractive. Women are not used to a man who can look at them, desire them, enjoy them, and still refuse to tolerate what goes against his standards. That contrast is the root of the mysterious feeling they talk about. They can't predict you because your behavior doesn't depend on their mood, it depends on your principles. Now, how do you actually create this emotional imprint that makes your absence hit her so hard? You start by becoming present, but not dependent. When you interact with her, you show genuine curiosity. You listen. You answer from a calm place. You don't rush. You're not trying to impress her with a clown performance. You're not bragging. You're not selling yourself. You're simply there, grounded, attentive, fully in the moment. You offer emotional safety, not by saying you can tell me everything 15 times, but by being silent when it's time to listen, by not judging when she shares, by not turning everything into a joke or a competition. At the same time, you don't make her your universe. You still go to the gym, you still work on your projects, you still meet your friends, you still study, you still grow. You answer, but not instantly every time. You're available, but not 24/7 on demand. You show interest, but you don't beg for attention. Psychologically speaking, you are pairing your presence with stability and depth. In attachment theory, that kind of presence creates a safe emotional base. Her system learns. When he is here, I feel grounded, I feel seen, I feel challenged in a good way. That's the beginning of the imprint. Then comes the second layer. You set subtle standards. You don't laugh at disrespect. You don't reward mixed signals. You don't play the keep me as a backup role. You don't need to scream your standards. You simply live them. If she disappears for days without explanation, and then comes back like nothing happened, you don't immediately shower her with attention. If she tries to make you jealous with low-level games, you don't fight, you don't compete, you don't ask for a place, you simply disengage. Your behavior is constantly sending one message. I like you, but I do not need you to feel complete. And here is where most men fall apart. When a woman starts to test them, and tests are absolutely natural, they panic. She takes longer to reply, she becomes colder, she stops initiating, she goes out more, she posts certain things online. Instead of observing calmly and trusting their value, they throw away all their standards. Suddenly, the man who said he wouldn't beg is sending walls of text. The man who said he respected himself is arguing in her DMs. The man who claimed he had a life is now waiting all day for one emoji. That's the moment when she unconsciously registers. I have him. He is not going anywhere. I can push the line. What does that do to her attraction? It doesn't always kill it instantly, but it starts a slow erosion. The emotional imprint you were building begins to dissolve. You become predictable. You become emotionally cheap. And no woman cries at night for a man whose presence has become emotionally cheap. So what is the movement that changes everything? It's very simple to describe, but extremely hard to execute if you don't have a spine. You identify the point where your intuition tells you, this dynamic is not respecting who I am. And instead of negotiating your value, you make one calm, definitive decision to stop investing. That is the do this once. Not ghosting randomly. Not disappearing to provoke a reaction. Not playing hot and cold. I'm talking about a well-thought-out, aligned with your standards decision to walk away from a dynamic where your presence is taken for granted or treated as second class. You don't shout. You don't insult. You don't blame. You don't use emotional blackmail. You simply step out of the game. Sometimes that decision is expressed in a short, clear sentence said or written once. I don't feel aligned with this type of dynamic, so I'm stepping back. And then you actually do. No follow-up. No checking in to see if she's mad. No sorry, I overreacted. Just because you felt lonely 3 days later. Other times, you don't even need to explain anything. The behavior you receive already tells you she doesn't value your presence. And instead of asking for clarity for the 15th time, you create your own clarity. You cut off your emotional and sometimes also logistical investment. You stop initiating. You stop responding instantly. You stop offering the benefits of your presence to someone who doesn't treat them as a privilege. You redirect that attention to your mission, your body, your money, your craft, your circle, your spiritual growth, and you stay there. What happens in her mind and body when a man who is stable, present, and grounded makes this move once, with conviction? At first, she might rationalize it. He's just busy. He's overreacting. He'll come back. They always do. She tries to put you in the same drawer as the other guys who played games. But as time passes and you don't return to negotiate your value, something in her nervous system starts to panic. Her brain compares the past pattern, your consistent presence, your warm energy, your attention, with the current reality. Silence, distance, no drama. And that contrast is what hurts. The same way you only really feel the weight of your legs when you stand up too fast after sitting for hours. She only really feels the weight of your presence when it suddenly disappears after becoming part of her emotional routine. That is loss. And humans grieve loss with sadness, with regret, with tears. Very often, she won't even consciously admit this. She might say to her friends, "He was too serious," or "He couldn't handle me." or some superficial phrase to protect her ego. But alone, at night, the story changes. Because there is no audience to impress, no image to defend. There, she is just herself, and her nervous system. And her nervous system remembers how it felt to have a man who didn't chase, but cared. A man who didn't control, but led. A man who didn't collapse at the first sign of rejection. A man whose silence now feels heavy, not empty. And that's where the tears can come. Not because you manipulated her, but because you're leaving exposed a truth. She had something valuable in her life, and she did not match that value. This is why it's so important that you don't turn this into some cheap strategy. If you walk away today and tomorrow you're back because you saw her story with another guy, you destroy the entire effect. You teach her that your decisions are not real. You teach her that all she needs to do to bring you back is to poke your insecurity. The man whose absence haunts a woman is not the man who leaves and returns like a lost puppy every time he sees a crumb of attention. It is the man whose inner compass keeps him faithful to his standards no matter how strong the storm of emotion gets inside him. That's where stoicism, again, becomes practical. Feeling the urge to contact her and still not doing it. Feeling the need for closure and still not chasing words that won't change anything. Feeling the pain and still choosing actions that honor the man you want to be. There's another layer here that very few people talk about: your digital behavior. We live in an era where most of emotional seduction happens through a screen. If you say you've stepped back, but you spend your nights watching her stories, liking her posts, reacting to everything she does, you are not gone. You are ghost energy, still orbiting her world. That doesn't create loss, it creates backup comfort. She senses that you're still around, still watching, still available. It makes it easier for her ego to relax. So if you choose to make this move, you have to be consistent in the digital dimension as well. You might not need to block her, but you definitely need to stop feeding the connection with your constant attention. You don't stalk, you don't obsess, you don't decode every picture. You return your focus to your own life. Now, maybe you're thinking, but what if she never comes back? What if she doesn't care? And that question reveals your real priority. If your main goal is to get her back at any cost, you are already losing, because you're willing to sacrifice your growth, your dignity, and your future for the tiny possibility of recreating a dynamic that already hurt you. The goal of this move is not to guarantee that she will chase you. The goal is to ensure that you never again abandon yourself in an attempt to be chosen. The paradox is this: when you truly accept the possibility of losing her and still choose your standards, you become more attractive, not less. Not just to her, but to every woman you will meet after her. You shift from man who begs to be accepted to man who invites you into a life that already has meaning. That energy alone makes you unforgettable. If at some point she does reappear, and many times she will, maybe weeks or months later, the way you respond in that moment will either confirm or destroy everything you have built. If you pick up your phone and flood her with attention as if nothing happened, you send a clear message: your standards were temporary, your absence was a manipulation, not a decision. She might feel relieved for a moment, but she will not feel that deep respect that changes how she sees you. On the other hand, if you respond calmly, without bitterness, with curiosity but not hunger, you show her that you did not spend that time on the floor waiting. You invested it in yourself. You grew. And now, even if she steps back in, she is stepping into the world of a man who is even more centered than before. Maybe you choose to give her another chance. That's your choice. But now it has to be on different terms. Not as her emotional employee, but as a man who knows his worth. You pay attention to her actions, not her apologies. You watch if her consistency matches her words. You no longer trade your peace of mind for a bit of attention. If she is truly different, you will feel it in her behavior. If not, you will be ready to let her go again, this time with even less fear. And that is another reason why, even if she never cries for you, this entire process is worth it, because you will never be the same man again. You will have trained the muscle that every powerful man needs, the ability to walk alone when necessary. Right now, as you're listening, you probably have someone in mind, a woman whose attention has become your drug, a woman whose silences affect you more than they should, a woman whose hot and cold behavior keeps you trapped in a loop of anxiety and hope. I want you to be brutally honest with yourself. How much of your day does she occupy in your mind? How many things have you stopped doing because you're too focused on her? How much of your sense of value depends on whether she approves of you? If the answer is too much, then hear this clearly. This is the moment life is asking you to choose. You can continue chasing the hit of dopamine that comes from one more message, one more night, one more like, or you can choose something harder, but infinitely more powerful. To become the man whose presence is a privilege, not a right. That is what do this once really means. Not play with her mind once. Not ignore her for 3 days and then text her again with a joke. It means choosing from now on to never again stay where you are not respected, appreciated, or reciprocated. It means making one decisive cut when your intuition tells you, this is not aligned with who I am. It means staying loyal to that cut, even when your emotions scream. It means trusting that the right woman will feel your energy and recognize it, because deep down, women crave men who can love deeply without collapsing. And yes, it means that some will cry for you, not because you destroyed them, but because your absence confronts them with their own behavior. They will feel the weight of your integrity, maybe too late. From today forward, you will stop asking, what can I do so that she never leaves? And start asking, who do I need to be so that if I leave it is felt? That version of you does not live in her phone. He lives in the gym when he doesn't feel like going. He lives in the hours of focused work, cuando nadie lo ve. He lives in the moments where you say no to what weakens you and yes to what strengthens you, even if no one applauds. He lives in your discipline, in your ability to delay gratification, in your willingness to be misunderstood, in your capacity to sit with discomfort instead of running back to what hurts you. That is the man a woman remembers at night. That is the man she cries for, even when she doesn't fully understand why his absence feels heavier than other breakups. So here is your choice. You can keep being the guy who sends one more desperate message, who explains one more time, who accepts one more disrespect just to avoid feeling alone tonight. Or you can become the man who, once in his life, draws a line so firm that every woman who crosses it loses the privilege of his presence. You don't need to be cruel. You don't need to be revengeful. You don't need to hate her. You simply need to love your own path more than you fear her absence. Do this once. For real. With commitment. With discipline. And watch what happens, not just in her world, but in yours. Because in the end, the real secret is this. The moment you become the man who is willing to walk away, you stop crying for women, and women start crying for you, sometimes all night, without even knowing why.